How many times can you stand at the edge of the cliff before you finally decide to jump? Folks, the Chicago Bulls are back in that familiar, suffocating space, 10th in the Eastern Conference, trapped in basketball purgatory, watching the play-in tournament circle their calendar like a bad, recurring dream. And now, after years of half measures and organizational indecision, we're hearing whispers that might actually signal something different, something real. Coby White, the 25-year-old guard who's putting up career numbers, the player they've protected like Fort Knox for years, might actually be available. According to NBA insider Mark Stein, the Bulls aren't shopping him around, but for the first time, they're genuinely open to listening. Not just politely nodding while teams call, actually listening. This isn't just another trade rumor, everyone. This is a potential inflection point for a franchise that's been stuck in neutral so long they've forgotten what acceleration feels like. The question isn't whether Coby White is valuable. It's whether Chicago finally has the courage to admit what everyone else already knows. This roster, as currently constructed, isn't going anywhere. So, buckle up, because we're about to dissect what might be the most consequential decision the Bulls have faced in years, and whether they'll actually have the guts to pull the trigger. Let's start with the facts, because in the fog of trade rumors, facts matter. Coby White is averaging career-high numbers in both scoring and assists this season. When healthy, he's been Chicago's most consistent offensive weapon, their primary creator, the guy who can get his own shot when the offense stagnates. At 25 years old, he's theoretically entering his prime, the sweet spot where talent meets experience, where potential starts becoming production. But here's the brutal reality that the Bulls' front office can't ignore. White has only played 12 games this season due to injury. 12 games. And in those games, while his offensive numbers look impressive in isolation, he's posting the worst defensive rating of his career. The Bulls currently have the 7th worst defense in the league, and White, fairly or unfairly, is part of that equation. Now, White isn't a bad defender. He's not a turnstile, but he's not a stopper either. And in today's NBA, where two-way versatility is the currency of championship contention, that matters. When you're building a roster, you're not just evaluating what a player does well, you're calculating what they can't do and whether those limitations are fatal to your championship aspirations. For the Bulls, the calculation is becoming increasingly clear. Coby White is a good player on a bad team. He's putting up numbers that look great in a vacuum, but aren't translating to wins. And when you're stuck in 10th place, watching the play-in tournament approach like an inevitable disappointment, you have to ask yourself the hard question: is this player part of the solution, or is he just making the problem look prettier? So, what's different now? Why are the Bulls suddenly more open to trading White than they've ever been? According to Stein's reporting, the Bulls aren't proactively shopping White. They're not calling teams and pitching packages, but when teams call, and teams are calling, Chicago is actually engaging in substantive conversations rather than immediately shutting them down. This is a subtle but significant shift. For years, the Bulls have treated White like an untouchable asset, a cornerstone piece they were building around. Now they're acknowledging market interest and at least exploring what a return might look like. Why the change? Several factors are converging. First, the injury history. White's durability concerns are real. 12 games into the season is a red flag that potential trade partners will absolutely factor into their offers. The Bulls know this, and they know his trade value might not improve if he continues missing time. Second, the looming contract situation. While White isn't a free agent this summer, he will be eventually, and the Bulls have to decide whether they want to commit significant long-term money to a player who's been part of multiple losing seasons. Trading him now, while he still has team control, maximizes return. Third, the Josh Giddey factor. And this, folks, is where things get really interesting. Let's talk about the elephant in the United Center. Josh Giddey just signed a massive $100 million extension in the offseason. $100 million. That's not role-player money. That's not nice complimentary piece money. That's franchise building, keys to the offense. We're betting our future on you money. And here's the thing, When White was out to start the season, Giddey stepped into the primary ball handler role and thrived. He showcased exactly what the Bulls saw when they gave him that extension: elite court vision, the ability to break down defenses, and a passing instinct that creates easy opportunities for teammates. Giddey's ability to orchestrate an offense is genuinely special. He sees passing lanes that other players don't. He makes the game easier for everyone around him. And at 22 years old, he's younger than White with theoretically more upside. So here's the strategic calculation the Bulls are facing. If you believe Josh Giddey is your franchise point guard, and that $100 million extension suggests you do, then what exactly is Coby White's role moving forward? They're both ball-dominant guards. They both need the ball in their hands to maximize their effectiveness. Playing them together creates spacing issues and defensive vulnerabilities. One of them needs to be the primary creator, and the Bulls have already made their choice by signing Giddey to that massive deal, which means White, as valuable as he is, might be redundant. And in the NBA, redundancy is a luxury losing teams can't afford. Now let's address the obvious question. If the Bulls are serious about rebuilding, why is Coby White the player generating trade, but instead of Nikola Vucevic? Vucevic is 35 years old. His defensive limitations are glaring. His foot speed is declining. His rim protection is virtually non-existent. He's on an expiring contract, and his trade value has cratered compared to what it was 12 months ago when the Warriors were interested. By every logical metric, Vucevic should be the first player out the door. He's the veteran on a young team going nowhere. He's the asset that's depreciating by the day. He's the player whose departure would actually signal a commitment to rebuilding rather than perpetual mediocrity. But here's the problem. Vucevic's market has dried up. Teams that needed a center have already addressed that need. The Bulls overplayed their hand last season, asking for too much, and now they're stuck with a player nobody wants at the price Chicago needs to get. Patrick Williams is another obvious trade candidate. He signed a bloated contract that doesn't match his production. He's been inconsistent, injury-prone, and hasn't developed into the two-way wing the Bulls hoped he'd become. But again, who's taking on that contract? What team looks at Patrick Williams and thinks, yes, that's the piece we need to get over the hump? This is the cruel reality of the Bulls situation. Their most tradable asset is the one player they probably shouldn't trade. White is young, productive, and on a reasonable contract. He's exactly the type of player contending teams covet, which means he'll actually generate real offers with real value. Vucevic and Williams? They might get you a second-round pick and salary relief if you're lucky. So we arrive at the fundamental question that's haunted the Bulls for half a decade. Are you rebuilding or are you retooling? Because those are two very different paths with very different implications. Rebuilding means trading everyone with value. It means accumulating draft picks. It means accepting that you're going to be bad, really bad, for multiple seasons while you develop young talent and build through the draft. It means trading Coby White, Zach LaVine, if anyone will take him, Vucevic, and anyone else who can fetch assets. Retooling means keeping your young core, White, Giddey, potentially Ao Dosunmu, and trying to upgrade around them. It means making smart veteran additions. It means believing you're closer to contention than you actually are. The Bulls have been trying to retool for years, and it hasn't worked. They're stuck in the play-in, watching actual contenders operate on a different level, convincing themselves that one or two moves will bridge the gap. Trading Coby White would be an admission that retooling has failed. It would be a signal that they're finally committing to a proper rebuild. It would mean accepting short-term pain for long-term gain. The question is, does this organization have the stomach for it? Let's get practical. If the Bulls do decide to trade Coby White, what should they expect in return? White is 25 years old, averaging career highs in scoring and assists, and still has team control. That's valuable. But he's also injury-prone, posting career-worst defensive numbers, and shooting under 30% from three this season. That's concerning. A realistic package probably looks like One young player with upside, think a late first-round pick from the last 2 to 3 drafts who hasn't broken out yet. One first-round pick, likely protected, probably in the 20 to 30 range. 1 or 2 second-round picks as sweeteners salary matching, which might mean taking back a veteran on an expiring deal. That's not a haul. That's not a franchise-altering return. But it's assets. It's draft capital. It's the beginning of a proper rebuild rather than the continuation of mediocrity. The Bulls would need to resist the temptation to ask for too much, the same mistake they made with Vucevic. They need to recognize market reality and take the best available offer rather than holding out for a package that doesn't exist. February 5th is circling on the calendar, folks. The trade deadline is approaching, and the Bulls are running out of time to make a decision. Do they trade Coby White and signal a genuine commitment to rebuilding? Do they hold onto him, convince themselves that health and chemistry will turn things around, and run it back for another disappointing season? Do they make a half-measure move, trading Vucevic for scraps while keeping White, and pretend they're making progress? Based on their history, I'm skeptical they'll make the bold move. This is an organization that's been allergic to decisive action for years. They've been stuck in the middle, unwilling to commit fully to either contention or rebuilding, hoping that incremental improvements will somehow add up to something meaningful. But hope isn't a strategy, and at some point you have to look in the mirror and admit that what you're doing isn't working. Trading Coby White would be painful. He's a fan favorite. He's homegrown talent. He represents hope for a franchise that hasn't had much to celebrate recently. But keeping him while building around Josh Giddey doesn't make basketball sense. It's redundancy masquerading as depth. The Bulls are at a crossroads, and for once, they might actually be ready to choose a direction. Whether they have the courage to follow through remains to be seen. This is the story of organizational paralysis meeting market reality. The Chicago Bulls have spent years avoiding hard decisions, convincing themselves that one more tweak, one more veteran addition, one more culture change would transform them into contenders. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. And trading Coby White, as painful as it might be, could be the first honest step toward building something sustainable. The question isn't whether White is good. He is. The question is whether he fits the timeline and roster construction of where this franchise needs to go. And if the answer is no, if Josh Giddey is truly the future, then holding on to White out of sentimentality or fear is just delaying the inevitable. February 5th is coming. The phones are ringing. Teams are interested. The Bulls have a decision to make, and for once, it feels like they might actually be ready to make it. If you're a Bulls fan watching this unfold, or if you're just fascinated by the chess match of NBA team building, drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Chicago trade Coby White and commit to a rebuild, or is there still a path to contention with this core? Because this franchise has been stuck at this crossroads for far too long, and the time for half measures is over.